You're listening to Spiritual Growth Tools on the radio, helping you understand the blocks you have in your life to being happy, with a wide variety of guests to help you better understand the problems you're having in your own life. Whether you're depressed, poverty-stricken, suffering ill health, or confused about how to take the next step, discover products, services, and information that will enable you to grow with grace and address issues that are preventing you from happiness, health, or abundance. Go to spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk and find out what's holding you back.
Hello everyone, and you are listening to Spiritual Growth Tools on the radio, where we discuss spiritual growth, what that means, and how it can help you move forward through the blocks that you have to health and happiness. I am your host, Caroline Nettle, and today's special guest is Ross Bartlett. Welcome, Ross.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, Ross. Welcome. So, I was learning a lot about Ross today, and he is just one of those phenomenal, dynamic people that seems to get more into a day than everybody else. So, here is a little list of the things that I found out about him, and I'm sure we're going to be talking to him a bit more about what else he's done. But he is the youngest professional medium to appear on radio, in magazines, national newspapers, as well as on the TV, do solo tours. He began teaching spirituality at the tender age of 16. He's a minister and a guest lecturer, and his book is the highest average reviews for an ebook in the religion and spirituality category, which is just phenomenal. He's just telling me that's over 1 million books. That's incredible. Like I said, I'm sure I've missed out a few things. But Ross, I just wanted to start off, if you could tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and how it was you started, as I asked you just before we came on, you started doing your readings at the tender age of 14. How did that come about?
Well, I'd originally had lots of experiences of a spiritual nature when I was growing up from a very early point in my childhood years, of seeing the spirit world, hearing them, different physical related mediumship experiences as well. So I'd always obviously had some awareness that there was an afterlife and the spirit world were around me. And then it came to the point I just sort of turned 14 and my grandmother passed away. And my mother started going to spiritualist churches, and I was like, well, I'll check a bit of that out as well. So I went along and then kept getting sort of messages through from the spirit world, from the mediums giving the dems and lectures, talking about these experiences that I'd had in my youth, and that they happen for a purpose, and that I could learn to sort of obviously further control and harness my abilities to do readings and such. And it all kind of came about very naturally, actually, just as a lot of the main points in my career and transitions where I've just sort of gone along to something or had something offered to me. And for instance, at the start there, it was a group-related meditation. I'd never meditated before up until that point, and had this real sort of strong experience during it. And all then went on from there of me sitting in different circles and developing, and it all kind of happened quite rapidly, really. And then, as I said, started doing private readings for different people at 14.
Yeah, which is a phenomenal age, because I was just thinking to myself, many of the mediums that I meet, when I do fairs and shows and, that come on my radio show and stuff, my opinion, which, is humble, is that very often mediums are the ones that have really struggled in life or have had really big life lessons to learn. So here you are, and I'm thrilled for you. It just seems like the way you tell it just seems to have flown really naturally. And but one of the things I would say is, at 14 I didn't really know who I was. I had no life experience in inverted commas, and very often the work of mediums is to help people to heal with understanding about death and the afterlife, and get in touch with loved ones and stuff. So do you feel like you had enough life experience to I don't even know what I'm trying to ask you. Yeah, enough life experience to I suppose the messages were just coming through and you were just passing them on, is that right?
Yeah, I say there's several answers to that, really. One, I think I had the major experience that is greatly helpful, which is actual grief and bereavement myself, having lost my grandma. I lived with her all of my life up until that point. She was very much like a mother to me, so it was really like me losing my mother more than anything else. We're very, very close. She's talked about quite a bit in my book, and our relationship is touched on a bit within that, and indeed her passing. So I had that grief, and I'd come through it, through, spiritual learning, basically. And I just sort of completely indulged myself in spiritual books and writing and studying different religions and spiritual pathways and such. So I did a lot of that from a very early point. Even before, I suppose, I got interested in actual spiritualism and mediumship. I'd already studied a lot of religions and such on just a personal basis out of interest from when I was about probably 10 onwards. And also, as you say, it's kind of like just passing those messages on through. It's a beautiful thing with mediumship. You don't have to be too involved yourself if you don't want to be some of the time. So that helped. And also, I think I very much kind of had to learn very quickly and grow and mature very quickly in those earlier years, which I would like to think I managed okay.
Sounds to me like you're not doing too badly. So do you think it ran in your family, or? Well,
I think, my grandmother, that grandmother who I mentioned there particularly had definitely a psychic awareness herself. She used to, I think, see events before they would happen and such. And it's not something I really understood, though, until several years after, when I was maybe 17, 18, I was actually looking and writing my book, the autobiography, and I was thinking back to certain things she said, and one event in particular, and then I was discussing it more openly as well, obviously with other relatives, and they would talk to me about things, and it definitely seemed that she had some sense of it, but obviously hadn't developed it to the extent I went on to do.
And do you feel like this is what you were put on earth to do? Is it your mission?
Well, I'm pretty stuck doing it now, whether it is or it isn't. But I think so. It's all come about quite naturally. Even the book and such. I was in a magazine article, and the editor and commissioner of that genre in a company sent me an email, said they read the article and would I be interested in actually writing a book. So it wasn't like I went out chasing these things. Either it's all kind of come around naturally, and it feels right. And I suppose to talk about, otherwise it would just be other people's opinions on whether they obviously feel from their experience with me whether this is what I'm meant to be doing and such.
I get a very strong feeling that it is. I'm just really aware that a lot of 14-year-olds will go, oh no, I'd rather be, down the pub or chasing girls or whatever, on the hockey field so I think you must have chosen it at some deep level.
Yeah, well, as I said, I was doing those readings at 14, 15. It's a real sort of maturing period, particularly. I did my first public demo at 15 as well.
Wow.
So I was gaining a lot of experience in life and people's lives and mediumship and spirituality. And from my experiences, I decided when I was probably still 15, actually, that, when I left high school, I wanted to just go straight into working full-time as a medium and seeing what happened, really, because it's what I felt I wanted to do. It was an innate inner feeling that felt right, and also I've seen how, the mediumship and such could help people, change people's lives, heal them, and there's not many jobs out there like that, where you're actually given the ability to do that and help somebody in that way and move somebody. So I thought, hey, this is what I want to do.
Well, good for you. Round of applause.
Thanks.
Okay, let's talk about why mediumship helps people. And one of the things I want to introduce is the subject of death. It's very relevant to me right now. And I know that for me, my first psychic experience was when I was 4. And I stood behind somebody in church and I said, your husband's going to die. And he died. Basically, I was really, really, really told off for it because A, I'd done it in church, B, I shouldn't have known that, and C, my mother was terrified of it, I think is the truth. So yes. I didn't go on and develop it until a bit later on in life, when of course now I have. But I do remember being, and learning this from my peers and my parents, that death was the be-all and end-all. There was nothing after death. It was terrifying. that meant, and that belief had meant that we really needed to make this life worthwhile. I must admit, from the age of about 11 to 15, I was obsessed with reincarnation. Absolutely couldn't stop reading books about it. So that gives you a bit of a hint that I probably should have listened to myself a bit more, but I didn't. Anyway, and I have, obviously completely done a 180 turn, because now I see death as just the next stage in a journey. Obviously, I talk to, people that have passed over myself, and I just wondered what your experience of death was, and how we can help people through mediumship to be less scared of it.
Yeah, I mean that's a very it's a very wide subject that can connect into many areas of various aspects to health, happiness, the psyche, and so on. But obviously, with mediumship, it has immense healing ability to help people get over that grief, having lost a person, and can show them that there is more to life. It's not just one sort of struggle that finishes with often an abrupt conclusion, and that's it. And to some extent, it's all been for nothing. Obviously, mediumship can open up people's minds and show to them that one, there is an afterlife, so it's not all for nothing, and it doesn't have to all be struggles for nothing. And number two being that their relatives and everybody lives on in that afterlife eternally. And number three being that the people that have passed over still take a very active interest in our lives here. Just as they cared about us here, they still care about us, love us over there, and keep in touch with our lives, and indeed where they can try and help and guide us. I think those three factors for people can be very healing through loss and life and all other aspects of our earthly life here as well, and things we commonly struggle with as individuals. Something I was recently writing about, actually, with the Masters right now in consciousness, spirituality, and transpersonal psychology, was mediumship, actually, in connection to being a therapeutic tool and a potential transpersonal aspect of therapy. And something I've also talked about at the end of demonstrations lately as well is the fact that, as a medium, what you can do is you can prove those three factors to people, which can help them on their journey, can heal from that grief, take that edge, that rawness of the grief, and it can do that like I personally think nothing else can. So it is an immensely powerful tool, and what I would term as a transpersonal therapy. But the next process that I find people struggle with is the missing of that physical entity that they can put their arms around and interact with on a regular basis. That physical presence is something that I find often people will go on and on grieving for. So I've been talking a lot lately in some of my writings with the university staff and also in public dems and lectures about the need for people then to go on further and develop their own spirituality further as well after that first experience, and get things over aspects of their ego more which trap them in different material mindsets and issues here in their lives. And as Buddha said, there is no pathway to happiness. Happiness is the way. And I also say there is no pathway to spirituality. Spirituality is the way. So I very much tend to encourage that as the next part of the healing process leading on from mediumship as well. And I feel it's probably as important as if not more important potentially as well than the mediumship aspect to the journey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And some of the things that I've been learning about, is this belief that I have now that nobody goes before their time, even if we don't understand really why they've had to leave. And, I think some spirits come to Earth, some earth angels come, and, they teach us to let go, or they teach us that we're not in charge, or they teach us. Because I often get asked about, children that have passed, and people that go very, very young before their time. And, for a human in a human mindset, that's really difficult to comprehend. But if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, it's very understandable. That was their life lesson. That was what they came to Earth to do. and they agreed to teach the people around them that love them a certain lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a really tough one, isn't it, for people who aren't yet on the spiritual path and who are really immersed in the grief. I find that one is one that I get the most resistance to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is really tough. It's like saying people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, And yeah, I think what they struggle is to find the purposefulness in that passing, that death, But it's an interesting one when I explore the topic with people and have reflected on my own experiences in connection to that topic. That in general, you can find a purpose, perhaps a immensely important purpose as well. For instance, in my personal life, my grandmother, again, and the timing of her death would have been immensely important to the direction of my life. And we're talking at a space of months, potentially different. If she passed a matter of maybe 2-3 months later, my life could have gone a very different direction than what it ended up going in. And seeing as my life has progressed on in the next, into the next 7-8 years now, really, she gave me much more in death than she could have ever done so in life, on every possible level. And likewise then on to a friend of mine who originally started to sort of help me meditate and teach me to refine my abilities that I had more and such. He passed away as well, and when I would have been 15 or 16, I think I maybe just turned 16, and again his passing at that very time, although it seemed, both those passings at that time seemed like the worst thing that could ever happen to me, actually ended up being in the long run immensely important to my life, working out certain ways in the future. And definitely the whole process of each one of them passing taught me a hell of a lot as an individual as well.
Yeah, and I can absolutely echo that. My father passed away 16 years ago, and I just knew, even before we buried him, that he had died so that I could heal from, what happened between us with me as a child. And I remember saying that to someone in my family, and they were like, who do you think you are? They were really offended by that. But today, I still know that the reason I'm here and alive and much happier because I've gone through a lot of the healing is because he passed away. Because I'm sure it wouldn't have happened, if he'd been alive. And now, and in the beginning, he was just coming through all the time saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. But actually that helped me too, because it was like, okay, what are you sorry for? Okay, now I need to go and look at that. And, the relationship we have now, since he's been gone 16 years, is a really healthy one, much healthier than we ever had when he was, present. Do I want him sometimes in the room to talk to? Of course I do. I miss him. But yeah, I think it was, for me, it was really important. And similarly, I got into recovery from alcoholism 7 years ago, and just after I'd finished in the secondary, this young guy, he was absolutely adorable, and he overdosed. He overdosed on heroin, and he passed away. And I absolutely know that he wanted to help me from the other side, because the words that his father spoke to me was him speaking through his father. It was unbelievable and really helped me in my recovery. And, I'm still really fond of him. And I just hear him saying all the time, Caroline, you need to dance. It's really funny. He wants me to, lighten up and have more fun and stuff like that. And yeah, I was really sad. He was 24, and it seemed like a really big waste. But it's really, again, like you said, it's just helped me in so many ways, and so many of us, so many of us. So, but yeah, I always find the discussion about, when you say to someone who's lost a child, well, perhaps that child came to teach you the lesson of letting go, or it's just such a sensitive subject, and I can't imagine what that must be like, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I do find that one a difficult subject. But of course, then if you then start believing that, once I die, I'm going somewhere else, and I'll learn some more lessons somewhere else, and then I'll perhaps choose to come back here, and maybe that time I'll learn patience, or I don't know, that would be a good one for me. Or, self-love, or to be a faithful husband, or whatever it is my lesson is,
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it's, as you said, it's a very difficult one where people can't find the purpose. They're stuck in, material mindsets and aspects of things, and but I think, if you step outside of that and you step outside the material, the ego, and you're more in touch with your inner self and the universe, then you can easily find the reasons and the connections, and you find a sense of peace of what's meant to be and what's not. If that person was meant to be in your life the whole time, then they were. Whether that's a partner, which I think comes up a lot with me as well. Like they've been married and their spouse has passed away. That sort of thing, where that obviously wasn't meant to be in that connection, and perhaps there's somebody else for you to go on and have a relationship or learn from, or maybe that person may have been a close connection to you, but not actually your soulmate, and you're going on to find a soulmate and such. And also, I find the spirit world, often reflect to me that about our time here, and what is 30, 40 years in an earth lifetime here in relation to an eternity that you'll be spending with that person in the grander scheme of things, or persons, as the case is often. So, that's further what I would say about that,
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. They tell me that all the time. It's just such a short period of time that you're here on Earth, and that's why it's important to make every day count and stuff. But I also, one of the saddest things I think that we do as humans is, you'll see, even in TV shows, but in real life too, people who lost a partner 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and they're still grieving. And that the person who's passed on would not, the last thing they would want is for this person to, spend their life in grief over them because they've passed on. And Spirit are usually telling me to tell people, come on, live your life, go out and have fun and do the things you like to do. This person loves you and they're still with you, but they're just on a different physical plane.
Yeah, very much so. I try to, if this has happened, then in the grander scheme of things, it wasn't meant to be for whatever reason, and maybe you also need to take some time to reflect on reasons why maybe it wasn't meant to be, or, or how things went the way they did. I mean, obviously with the spirits we're coming through, sometimes they can suggest there certainly have too many reasons why this happened or needed to happen for whatever reason, and as I say, if something's not meant to be, it's not meant to be, and you're grieving over it in the wrong way. You're grieving for something that you never had, in a sense, because it was never meant to be, But again, very difficult for people here who don't have that sort of understanding or maybe connection to things, and of course are stuck in various material mindsets.
Absolutely. But, as you go along the spiritual path and hopefully you meet the right teachers or you read the right books, it becomes very clear that, I always love this joke, how do you make God laugh? Well, put God, universe, whatever you want, and you tell him your plans, because we humans love to control, and actually we have no control whatsoever, and, that must be hysterical for people in spirit to watch us clinging on to things that we need to let go of, or trying to manufacture things so that it goes our way, when in fact, we're trying to get a square peg into a round hole, and I'm very guilty of, struggling up the wrong path because I'm determined to make it work instead of relaxing back into, okay, what am I supposed to do, That was one of my hardest lessons, and I think I'm just beginning to get to the other side of that now and say, do you know what, I don't know what's best. Tell me what to do, But it takes, like you say, it is the ego and, the fear, and again, going back to what is death, for 90% of the population think that this is it. A lot of people in my family, we're very, very intellectual, so what I do, of course, is a great laugh, but they're all convinced that when they die, that's the end of it, and and I just think, well, let's wait till we go home. I call it going home, and let's have a good laugh about what we thought we were supposed to be doing, and oh, look, I got that wrong. But what would you say about what is the afterlife?
Well, I mean, again, it's a big question. I think there's various aspects to the afterlife, in different dimensions, and then, as you go up, you grow as an individual. You gain further spiritual growth and knowledge, understanding. Your consciousness grows, spirituality grows. Then, in turn, you're going to be accessing the spirit realms. But the thing that I often point out to people, when people say to me, where is the spirit world, or what is the spirit world, and I say, you're in it now. That's the thing people fail to realise, is that they're already in the spirit world, just a particular frequency range within it. Because people either don't know, or they get locked in material mindsets to realise that all that matter is energy condensed to a low vibrational state. It is still energy. It's just energy vibrating at a certain level, and we're spirit here and now as well, So I often like to point that out to people as well. And for me, when people pass over to the spirit world straight away, it's not like, it's all of a sudden everyone's different as well, on a cloud with a harp and everything, there is, growth that takes place over periods of time, and people, again, obviously grow and develop and can change as individuals for the better over there. But in the same way, they still have their personalities and little mannerisms and the ways, and very much, obviously, when they come through to mediums, they try to reflect that as much as possible. I think life is there is much the same as life here, but also in the same way it's very, very different, because the people are the same, but, obviously people can see things all of a sudden from a much bigger perspective and broader angle, and realise that, hey, maybe all this time I invested in on this earth with material things and gathering material things was pretty much worthless, and now, they look at things on a deeper level, and are more interested in spiritual growth and resolving karmic debt, and obviously keeping in touch with people here and doing whatever they can over there to progress on further in their lives over there. And then if you want to, again, go into things like reincarnation of different forms, essentially, coming back and looking at potentials of, again, further growth through those means.
Yeah, and it's really funny, whilst you're talking, my belief is that this is the hardest school. Earth school is the hardest one. And I think that's because we have a body and these ridiculous belief systems that we've perhaps inherited from our family or our ancestors or society, whatever. And I don't know, I know as a little girl I always used to say I want to go home. And home to me is up there, whether I'm from, planets or a different dimension or whatever. But yeah, sometimes I look at the world and I think, gosh, it can be quite challenging here on Earth, whereas I imagine it to be easier up there because, even just having a body is fairly challenging to us.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I think seeing things from the bigger picture and such can have a massive effect on life, and how easy it is, and obviously you have that over there. So I think that's why, again, for any conflicts that in general people had here are resolved when they get over there, and if they have a conflict with somebody that's still here, quite often they might want to come through to a medium if they have the chance and address the matter to, again, resolve it and get things off their chest and karmically further resolve things as well.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, it makes me laugh because we can be slightly arrogant sometimes, and I was suffering from that one time. I'm a healer, and so I was talking to my mentor, and I was saying, look, I just get so frustrated. I tell them, all you need to do is stop smoking, or drink a little less, or, do a bit of exercise, or drink more water, just real common sense stuff. And she said, Caroline, maybe they're not supposed to get it this lifetime. And I think that blew wide open my investment in they have to get well. Now it's like, I do what I can. I give that to you. Whatever you do with that is and that's the thing, maybe sometimes I think this is this is a lifetime which is the culmination of quite a few lifetimes. I feel like this lifetime I've really, that's great. I'm feeling really pleased about that. But until I get back home, I won't know that for sure,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's exactly as you say, really, there. And it's difficult, you know, when you have an understanding and you know if somebody else has that understanding, and you care about people or that person, and you want to help them, and you know if they just had this understanding or took that on board, then it would make a massive difference in their life, you know. And if you care, which, you know, if you're a therapist in some way, a healer, then, you know, you should care and have to care. I always imagine to have got into that pathway. Well, let's hope you did it for the right reasons. So, yeah, it's difficult. You know, it's something that I've found very difficult over the years, because I know this and that will help somebody, but, you know, they're just not ready in themselves, in their mind, to take these things on board and just roll with them themselves, you know. Especially without you kind of holding their hand all the way, which you can't do. Yeah. So it is a constant potential place for frustration, but yeah, I suppose it's about letting it go and just knowing that you've done everything you can and you can't do any more. You know, if you care, sometimes there's that conflict going on of like, oh, I want to do more. You know.
Sometimes, and of course, you know, the healer heal thyself thing. If I'm invested in everybody getting well, then I'm obviously not looking at my own stuff. And you know, I think for me, going back to this death thing, how that has really helped me not being frightened of death, because I literally just see it as I will have. Because I don't believe anyone goes before their time, so I know there's no point being frightened of when I'm going to die, because it's out of my hands. So I might just as well live every day the best that I can. And you know, and one of the things that really struck me, I'm really unsure why it has affected me as deeply as it has, but it really has, was Peter's Geldof passing. Mm-hmm. She's 25 years old. They don't know why she's died, but you know what? It's just made me so resolute to make my life worthwhile. There is a reason that I've been through everything I've been through and I'm still here, and I actually think it's a huge blessing to be here at this time, and it's so exciting. And today's a grand cross. I mean, you know, everything seems to be aligning to the fact that, you know, it really is time to wake up and like you say, start clearing off karmic debts and, you know, working on our stuff so that we can, you know, become happier and transform this planet. Because I'm a real, you know, I love this planet to pieces, and you know, one of the things I want to do is go off and plant some trees in Africa, which is really exciting. And that was given to me by Spirit on January the 30th. I just heard this deep voice in my head saying, well, what are you going to do about it? Because I was posting again, oh, this is awful and that's dreadful and boo-hoo. And this voice asked me this question, and I just was transfixed. It was the perfect question for me, of course. Mm-hmm. And I spent 2 or 3 days going, what do I want to do? Because I'm a doer, not a moaner. I'm a doer. But I'd got into the habit of moaning about how awful it was without doing anything. And I thought, yeah, I want to plant trees. So at the moment, I'm looking to raise £500,000. I think we'll just about cover it, maybe in over 2 or 3 years. And because planting trees is what makes me really happy. And imagine me, I'm saying, look, there's 1 million trees that weren't there before.
Yeah.
You know, that's really exciting. So I'm really grateful to Spirit. Now, for 7 years, I've been going, what shall I do? I don't know what to do. What shall I do? I don't know what to do. And everything I tried didn't quite work. But I can clearly see now that was because I wasn't ready. And as soon as I'm ready, Spirit come in and off we go. So I'm delighted about that.
Yeah, well, when the pupil's ready, the teacher will appear. You know, it's another saying, and I think that crosses over to whatever. You know, when we're ready, you know, whatever we need is going to appear. You know, and whether that be an event that sparks that off in us, or what have you, and connecting further to what we were talking about again about, you know, death and purposefulness in life and such, and. Yeah, you know, my grandmother had a saying that was, today's time is yours, you know, it belongs to you. Tomorrow's time belongs to no one but God. And so, again, whatever you are, Great Spirit, you know, universal consciousness, what have you. And I think, again, that's a good little saying that sums it up. And I think it's worth also bringing up a topic that I quite often get asked when again, this topic comes into discussion is the question of, well, you know, do I have free will in life, or, you know, is it going to constantly just go a certain way and there's nothing I can do about it and such? And for me, I actually explain this as I do, pretty much a lot of stuff is all science related to me, and through things like quantum mechanics, quantum theory, transpersonal psychology aspects and such, and modern scientific understanding meshed with mysticism and spirituality and such, and I try to find where the two can have the same underlying understanding of reality and the natural world. And for me, within that free will question, is yes, you do have free will, but in the same way, your life is going to go a certain way, and there's nothing you can do to avoid it. I explain that quite often using the Star Wars analogy, funnily enough, but it works very well in that if you look at various parts of quantum theory, it was just that every single moment in time is actually happening right now in one sort of eternal now. We're just not aware of that because we're stuck in just being one tiny aspect of that infinite whole. We're not capable of comprehending things on an infinitum scale, and very much caught, particularly here in our very material mindsets as well, of moving in this real imaginary timeline, but living this day-to-day type of life in existence. Whereas really every single moment in our infinite futures is happening in one sort of moment, one right now. But we will forever be going along on this timeline to different extents, which I don't have a problem with because I'm used to that, and I quite like my little timeline in a way. But life would be very weird without it. But I use that analogy, saying that to me that's where the spirit world have suggested that the question, or rather the answer to that question, lies. And you have your free will, but in a sense you've already made your decision. So if a psychic sees something, a vision of something happening in the future, it's going to happen, but it doesn't mean you don't have your free will. You're just seeing all the choices that person is going to make on their own accord that will lead up to that event that is, again, happening in one eternal now or in the present moment. We're just not consciously aware of that, And the Star Wars analogy comes in with Anakin Skywalker, because he gets a lot of visions about future events happening, particularly in connection to his mother in the movies, and then eventually his wife. And he sees his wife in pain and dying. And he thinks, right, I'm going to make a load of very conscious personal decisions to try and make sure she doesn't die. But it actually ends up being that those decisions that he made, consciously trying to stop her death, are actually the things that lead up to her eventual death that he was seeing. And easily kind of explain if you watch some certain clips on the movie within that as well. So I just think it's worth kind of bringing that up, because it's something that I often get asked about it, the whole free will, destiny, dharma kind of concept within the whole overall question of death, reincarnation, and purposefulness in death and universe.
Yeah, and one of the things that I always say is, you are so free to, take what you want and leave the rest every time I do an angel reading. And, for some people, listening to the love from the angels is just too much, because it's unlike any love that we humans experience, or at least that's my experience anyway. But and I say, if you choose to disregard this, and you're instead of going to point A, which I've just told you, you go to point B. When you get to point B, it'll be so uncomfortable that you'll naturally gravitate to point A. It, like you say, it's not that you've got no choice. It's just that you have angels sort of nudging you all the time, saying, come on, you really know that you need to go left or right. So I think they just make it so untenable where you are until you make the right decision. And I have so many people come to me and they're like, I can't leave my job, which I hate and really drains my soul, because I like the money. But I keep getting visions of writing a book, or I keep getting visions of becoming an angel reader, or I keep getting visions of becoming a dance, studio person. But I can't leave because I need the money. And it's like, all of the spiritual texts say, follow your heart, and then the money will follow you. So, we're so obsessed with the security, which, is, in spiritual terms, that's a joke, because there's no security in money whatsoever. But, we feel so comfortable with our big house and our big car, and our soul dying, because what we should be doing is teaching children to finger paint or something, And the conflict in us is just, it comes up in my angel readings all the time about, well, okay, you've chosen to be in this, I call it a financial prison, and you can stay there as long as you want. However, here's a view of something that might make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really difficult one, and I was really guilty of that myself for a very long time. So, you know, they use my experience of being stubborn to show people that, yeah, it got really horrible. I really had to shift. I had to make some massive changes, not through choice, because I didn't hear the signals early enough to do it pleasantly. But that's just my path. That doesn't have to be everybody else's. Okay, so you touched on something earlier a little bit, and I'd like to bring it back up, and that is, you said, you know, sometimes spirits want to talk to us mere mortals down here because they're trying to, you know, cross off their karmic debts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just, what's your experience of the majority of messages that come from spirit?
Well, it depends if you mean the majority of messages in general or the majority of messages that are aimed for their benefit of, again, resolving karmic issues.
Okay, I'm going to say my experience is that they're nearly always really loving and helpful to the recipient.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the amount of love that comes through from the other side is phenomenal. I don't know who it's benefiting more, is my question to you. I think the person receiving the message, it can really, you know, heal them, like you say, years earlier than they would have if they'd not heard the message. So I know it's very, very, but who is that helping more, do you think?
I think it can be, sometimes I think it's maybe helping the individual more, you know, that's having the reading. Sometimes I think it can be helping the spirit world more, or both, you know, a mixture of the two, an even mixture. I mean, one example comes to mind where I was giving a reading to this lady, and the communicator coming through had, in certain ways, abused this particular lady when she was a young girl. And that was addressed in certain ways. You know, you could tell from it, it was a very, you know, with how the spirit was reflecting a sense of regret and very much a sense of, you know, an apologetic aspect to the message and such, was very a healing experience for her. And again, there was this idea of trying to get an understanding as to why the things that caused some of the things that happened. And it was very healing for her, but also I think very healing for the spirit communicating at the time, wishing to get obviously just resolve some karmic related issues, and both persons to grow and move forward into the future, really. Obviously with him over on the spirit side of life there, and her with her life for the rest of her time on this planet. So there, for me, there was very much a mutual sense of healing going on, a mutual sense of situations from the past being resolved, being worked over for mutual benefit. So other times I think maybe it's more specifically for the benefit of the person because of their personality. There may be a particular worrier, so the spirit world will be talking about and reassuring them on certain things. But of course, as we know, in giving, you are also indirectly receiving anyway, you know. So in a sense, with them coming through and helping their loved one, their relative, they're also going to be getting back on various levels themselves. So in that sense, it's a constant circle, I suppose, of growing and benefiting from both sides of things.
Yeah, and I just, you know, having found this mediumship and being able to speak to spirit, I just, when you're giving the messages, it just is such a wonderful experience, you know, for me as the person giving the messages. I do cry a lot. I was telling you that before we went on air. I seem to get people through who are really regretting stuff, and, you know, I haven't worked quite out how to stop crying, but like I was saying, there was a gentleman came for an angel reading, and this man was just like, I want to come through, and I was saying, well, I'm doing an angel reading. He was like, no, I want to come through. So I'm like, okay, so what have you got to say? And he was standing on the right hand side, so I was like, it must be your father figure. And he gave me this wonderful message about I didn't love my son in the way that he understood, but I want him to know that I did really love him, and, you know, some stuff happened, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I looked up, and the man I was telling the message to was in floods of tears, and his father had passed away a week before. Mm-hmm. So it was really raw, but he, you know, he just said, stop, I don't want to hear anymore, that's just perfect. That was amazing, thank you. And of course I was crying my eyes out, because, yeah, the spirit that was coming through was really sad, but, it was just such a wonderful thing to be able to give someone so soon after the loss of a father. And they'd obviously had a really confusing relationship, because he was telling me a bit about it afterwards, and it was like, wow, okay, I can see that there was, you know, just a lack of communication between the two of you. So for him to come through and be so vocal and, you know, give such a wonderful message, I know will have really helped that man with his grief, you know, and I couldn't want to do different work at all. I love it. Like you said, it is such a blessing to be given this gift. Mm-hmm. And I do tell everybody that they are capable of doing this. I would say it's like a muscle, and you just have to exercise it. And like you did, I went to some churches and sat in groups and did a few seances, and just got more confident.
Yeah, it's all a question of, you know, practice making perfect, again, like anything else, and the dedication you put in, you're getting the rewards back.
Yeah, and I was one of those that was like, I can't say that can't possibly be right. Okay, this lady's come through and she's got a red rolling pin. Yeah, that was you know what I mean? And I didn't trust myself. I think that was my problem. And now I've completely let go, and I'll just say lots of ludicrous things, because they know it's not about me. It's about what they're trying to impress on the person to, you know. Yeah. It is that you give, you know, street names and stuff like that. I don't get any details like that. I get more a sense of the person and their personality and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, each reading for me is different anyway. Some take a much more sentimental theme, some are much more factual based. I think it depends what the person who you're reading is needing at that time, and if it's a public dem, the atmosphere can be different as well, and the style of things can be slightly different than a private reading. So it really varies, I think, greatly on that, and also sometimes the characters coming through within, you know, the spirits coming through, and of course what they might want to address and say, and their personalities and ways of communicating, which can be very different to the next one that does come through as well.
Yeah. Sometimes they're hysterical, aren't they? Sometimes I just find them so funny.
Sometimes the ludicrous things are some of the most important or the most evidential in themselves as well. You know, I've given many things that, you know, would be considered to, you know, someone who didn't know how very, you know, out there and like random and such, but it makes perfect sense, that person, and is sometimes the most intricate of detail that makes everything tie into place for them, and maybe the most evidential thing you can even potentially say to them, as much so as other pieces of factual things like names and such, which I think, I suppose everything has its place in context to things, you know, and demonstrates certain things and certain factors.
It does indeed. Okay, so do you want to talk a little bit about this fabulous book that's got it's been more reviewed than over 1 million books in the religion and spirituality section? And being a writer myself, I do know that it's a really competitive section on Amazon, so I think you should be extremely proud of that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's just about my life so far, really. You know, I'm detailing all my experiences and some of the key points and examples of my work and various parts of the journey. You know, deal with mental mediumship, physical mediumship, different religious practices, and yeah, a lot of very, you know, it'll make you cry. I think, you know, there's some very emotional bits in there, and there's some funny bits in there as well, you know. So it seems a lot of people enjoy it and take different things from it. So hopefully it'll continue to go on forward.
Absolutely, and it's called Earth Angel. Did they help you with that title?
That's correct, yeah. That actually came about, I mean, there were several titles that was in discussion with my publisher, and that's the one that they liked the most, so they went with that one, and I was okay with that, so yeah.
Obviously that was supposed to be. And it's available on Amazon, and you can download it to Kindle, is that right?
Yep, it's download Kindle, several online stores, and you can get it in WH Smith's and Waterstones as well.
So I highly recommend you read that, because as you've been listening, Ross is an extremely interesting person. I am so thrilled you came on, Ross. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
They can go to my website, which is www.rossbartlettrealmedium.com, or they can add me on Facebook. If you Google my name, my website comes up top here anyway, as does my Facebook page, and there's a link from my Facebook page to, from my website to my Facebook page anyway. It's a good way to keep in touch with events and stuff. I'll post about them all on there as well, and different stuff going on, like, potential CDs, books and such for the future.
Sounds really exciting. So do you only tour at the moment in the UK, or do you go elsewhere?
No, I'm off to Switzerland later in the year, for instance, and done a lot of work abroad at times. Some potential stuff always on the cards in America and different things like that. So I say, if you're on Facebook and such, that's a good way. I'll post about stuff as and when they happen, and lots of potential projects on the go with different forms of media like TV and such as well. So it's just a question of water going under bridges and things all coming together.
Absolutely, but it sounds like you're being very guided in your life, which, I think is a really good thing. So if you want Ross to come and do, something in your town, the best thing to do is tell him about it and get some people together, because it sounds like you might want to go to America, and most of my listeners are from the USA. Okay, so you need to go to Ross Bartlett, realmedium.com. That's where you're going to find it. It's got some lovely music on there when you go onto the main page, and some really cute pictures of you. Quite a good gallery of them. So, okay. So I forgot to mention that you can find me on Facebook as Spiritual Growth Tools. Please go and like the page. It's where I post all the upcoming radio shows and various other bits and bobs about spiritual growth. So I think, Ross, I can see the time. That's been really thrilling. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I really recommend people go and work with Ross. He seems to have a busy schedule, so you'll need to check the schedule. But I would definitely recommend you look him up, Ross Bartlett. Thank you so much for coming on, Ross.
Thank you.
Really, really enjoyed talking to you. Okay, so what's happening next week? The next show is on April the 29th. The show airs at 7 p.m. GMT, and my guest is Michelle Carter. Michelle's coming on again. She was a guest, I think she was my second or third guest when I started the show, but she's been working on some new projects, so we're going to have her back on next week to talk about what's been going on for her. I know that she's been working really hard on making some big shifts in her energy, so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for listening to us on Spiritual Growth Tools on the radio, and if you'd like to make a donation to help with the running costs of the show, then please go to spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk, find the page with the radio shows on it, and you'll see a PayPal button that you can use to help keep the show going. I really love doing this show, so thank you so much for listening in. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll be kept informed about the upcoming shows that you will not want to miss. Stay safe, and I hope you find the tools you need to grow with grace this week. Speak to you next week. Lots of love to you all.
Thank you for listening to Spiritual Growth Tools live on the radio. For more information, go to spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk.